Welcome to Recovery His Way. I'm your host, Tom Reynolds, and today I'm joined with a very dear friend of mine, Greg Edmonds. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you very much for having me.
Greg's a good friend of mine. We've known each other for about almost 3 years, and you came to this program and graduated originally 6 months in January of 2019, and then stayed on and did the Advanced Recovery Group and graduated in July of 2019, I guess about almost 2 years ago. And we've kind of kept meeting. We've been meeting on a regular basis since then, and I've enjoyed our times together and really seen you grow in some great ways. And you've certainly been an inspiration to me, and I felt like your story would be an inspiration to a lot of others. So I want to make sure that others know about what God's doing in your life. So maybe you could kind of give us just a recap of, kind of your journey in recovery and how God's intersected that and what God's been doing in your life.
Okay. Thank you for having me. And upon coming to His way, or prior to coming to His way, I had different glimpses into recovery and felt consequences. But upon coming to His way, I was straight out of jail, a 3-month stint in jail. I was homeless and I'd basically abandoned 3 kids, failed marriages, and so I was hungry, and in jail, I guess I had an experience where I cried out to God, and I got into the Bible and His Word, and so that's when I got to His way, prior to coming to His way, it was revealed to me that if I was going to change my life, that I was going to, I was going to submit to God, number one, first and foremost, and that He would provide everything that I needed. He would provide the job, the home, the relationships in my life, even right down to the car and the circumstances that would allow me to become attractive again to my kids and to the world, to be able to be successful. If I was going to do that, it was going to be through God.
Right, right. Well, I know your story in substance abuse and recovery. When did that kind of start, and how long had you battled and struggled with that?
I was a college athlete, and so I started in college. I didn't have a lot of consequences in college, so I started, I had injury in college and so I started experimenting with painkillers and other dynamics contributed to that. Family dynamics, my own situation, where at an early age, the age of 18, prior to that, I started experimenting,
right.
With drugs and alcohol, and had a lot of success that with no foundation to stand on.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I was actually just talking in class a few minutes ago about how one of the dangers of success early is you kind of get more than you're able to handle before you're ready to handle it, and then you squander it. Unfortunately, like the prodigal son story, we're talking about that. And and I appreciate your story because I know it's been a long one. I know it's kind of interesting to me because there's people that we've interviewed and people I've known in this program who, since they were 10 years old or 11 years old, it's been a struggle and an issue in their lives. And then there's some that, kind of got really exposed to the trouble of it when they had injuries and athletic injuries particularly, in which painkillers became an alternative, and maybe at some point losing the athletic dream too kind of fades, and you end up with kind of the consequences of it. My addiction to opiates, while I now don't have basketball or football as a career anymore, and I'm kind of left with the addiction. And I guess, having gone through this program, what do you think were some of the things? I mean, you succeeded. I mean, you've gone through this program 6 months a year. You've not returned. You're not coming back again. Hopefully you won't have to come back as a resident in the future. But what are the things that you put in place when you first walked through these doors that you were committed to? I know you mentioned things about God and that kind of stuff. What were some of the things that practice-wise you did to reinforce those ideas and make sure they became a discipline or some kind of regimen in your life?
Right. I think one of the biggest factors for me is that I started to I really bought into before I got here. Um, I knew particular people that had been through the program, so and I knew them from the outside world, and I could see a glimmer of hope in their eyes that gave me confidence and faith in His way before I ever got here.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I was coming to the right place. And when I got here, um, I was already I bought in. I knew I was closing one chapter of my life, and I keep thinking back on um, the process of repentance and and confession. I was able to come in and really buy into the program. The practices I put on a daily basis were just in class. I believed in the people that were teaching me, and it was the right time, the right people at the right time,
Mm-hmm.
the right message of hope through Jesus Christ. That I started praying and meditating. I started journaling, started reading the Bible again, and letting God's word speak to me.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Since leaving His way, I know you've done a lot of things to kind of maintain that sobriety over the last couple of years. Maybe you could share kind of what the things. I mean, I think one of the great challenges is we have a structure that guys get plugged into here, but how do they translate that structure for themselves out there? And I feel like you've done a pretty good job of that. What are some of the things that you've been doing that have kind of supported this spiritual sobriety that you've been pursuing?
I just tried to the day I left, I got right into an AA meeting, but I tried to maintain the structure that was provided to me here. I know that was vitally important to me. I don't do well without structure. So on a daily basis, when I left, we drew up a plan for me as to what my weeks would look like, right down to my budget and all that. And I tried to maintain that. When I left, I mentioned going to an AA meeting. I went to a transition house, and I stayed there for a year. I let the money that I accumulated while I was here stay in the bank at His way. Little things like that, where I didn't want to I wanted to slowly transition my way back into life as I knew it, and that's worked for me. Prayer and meditation, working the 12 steps with a sponsor, continuing my counseling with you on a every other week on Fridays has slowly helped. I like to think of it just to maintain my refinement with God, and stay in His Word and be associated with the people. And to be quite honest with you, I had to change everything about my life.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right. I know life doesn't come without challenges, threats to our recovery. I'm sure you faced over the time you're here and beyond. Threats. And I guess I was interested in what are some of the threats maybe that come? Because Satan doesn't just kind of let you be. I mean, he's going to come at you with different things and going to kind of hit us in our sensitive spots, our tender spots, our vulnerabilities. What are some of the ones that you've had to kind of navigate during the last couple of years?
Definitely. When you say that, I think about the from Romans 2, I think about do not be conformed to the ways of the world, yet be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Mm-hmm. And just because you now have a newfound relationship with Jesus Christ and you know the way, that doesn't, you have that aha moment or whatever you want to, or the spiritual experience, that doesn't just carry you through. It's got to be a renewing of your mind on a daily basis. So I try to carry that forward and in everything that I do, and the relationships, the biggest challenges have been, and I mentioned changing everything, their relationships, I couldn't go back to the same relationships that I had been in that were truly toxic to me. Mm-hmm. I couldn't compromise. The little things, it's the little things, the music you listen to. It may sound crazy to some people, but it's a big thing. The music you listen to, what channel your radio is on, the movies you look at, what you allow to come into your world. I have to be careful not to compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy Mitchell taught a class here on compromise, the one that stuck out in my mind, that I've got to be very, very diligent in what I allow into my life, the people, the relationships, um, the language, and so forth.
Right.
Because quite frankly, I'll conform to the ways of the world and won't even realize it. And that's one thing that leads back to the state of mind that leads to addiction.
Right, right. And I know one of the things that you've been obviously involved in, your church says that you're involved in a competitive work environment. I mean, you're selling cars and you're in a very competitive environment. I know you're a competitive kind of person. That's kind of one of the things that you do well at, but also can be a threat as well as just even those good things. It doesn't have to be bad things coming in. It can just be, that kind of those cultural things that you have to kind of struggle with. I guess I'm interested in how do you manage those things? How do you manage the competitiveness, the things that happen in the car business or any business that obviously you want to have a job, you want to be successful in your job, and how do you balance that with your recovery and create a culture within you that can manage those kind of threats?
Not the easiest thing in the world. I think back to when you and I first started counseling, I get overrun with the competitiveness, and I'll let success dominate me if you have a little bit of success. It's easy to seek God through the failures, and to turn to Him. And I'm thankful for the need for Him during the failures, but during success, that's the important thing, is how do you handle those things? And I think back to our conversation early on, you've got to be okay with being in the middle of the pack. You don't have to be overly competitive at times. And I think if I can just surrender to that fact and to trust God and have faith, that's the biggest thing for me, is to continually renew my mind and understand that my identity doesn't come from what the world puts on me or what work puts on me. If I'm doing the best that I can, my identity comes from Christ today. And that's the important thing in my life today.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the things that has been big when you came here was kind of a pressing thing was really your family situation. Maybe you could share with us a little about what your family situation was, what has happened there, how has God been involved in that part of that process in terms of seeing your family redeemed?
Yes. When I got here, I mentioned I basically abandoned 3 children through addiction. I mentioned opiates earlier. Well, eventually evolved into an addiction with crystal meth and other things that the whole way of life, the lifestyle. So I'd abandoned 3 children, 2 failed marriages, and upon coming to His way, I mentioned also that I wanted God to restore that, and He's the great Redeemer. But when I got here, I had 2 children here in Huntsville. I had Chance that was in Auburn, the Auburn area, my 6-year-old, and I wanted to complete His way. I wanted to fix things as quickly as possible, and just immediately be restored and have a life with my children. And I kept telling you that I wanted to move to Auburn. That was the closest thing, chance I had that relationship there. So I wanted to move to Auburn and take care of my 6-year-old. You told me that recovery was about the big picture, and that I couldn't just fix one area of my life, go be a father to Chance. That recovery to me would be about the big picture, and that's what I set out to do, is to let God restore that. And it wasn't going to be on my time. So, through that, I've developed a relationship with Noah and Zoe, my 17-year-old son and my 12-year-old daughter, and also recently got in custody of my 6-year-old son, Chance. He now lives with us in North Alabama. So taking care of the big picture there has been a big thing for me there.
I know one of the things that happened along the way. Obviously, you've had 2 failed marriages, and having a godly relationship was important to you. How has God blessed you with that? What's happened in that area of your life?
Yeah, recently gotten married to a wonderful lady, Jocelyn James Edmonds, and she wonderful woman of God. We met through Facebook, and we became friends because we both have a similar story in recovery. She's been sober for almost 10 years now, and so interestingly enough, once we started talking, Jocelyn, I journal. That's one thing that's big in my life is I write. And she had no idea really that I wrote. And she sent me through the mail, she sent me a recovery Bible and a journal, So unknowingly to her, that was a big connection that we had.
Right,
We became
right.
friends through Christ, and then eventually met and had so much in common. We wound up obviously getting married, and I couldn't have been blessed more with a better person in my life. Not only is she a wife, she's an accountability partner, and she's a wonderful mother to her other two kids, and to Chance and to Noah and Zoe as well.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. I mean, it really is cool how God in his time has kind of brought that wholeness to your life in terms of reconciling all the pieces because you've been patient with that process. And really it's happened pretty quick. I mean, if you look back in just the time frame, we're talking a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a lot of pieces to come together in a pretty short time. And so I think God's really richly blessed you. I know you're grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
As you look into the future, what kind of passions, what kind of visions, what kind of things that drive you? I know you're kind of a driven guy. I mean, you like to have things that are motivating to you. So what kind of visions or passions regarding recovery are kind of driving your future at this point?
Number one, it's obviously to stay sober and continue the lifestyle that I've had, the new lifestyle, and also to cultivate new relationships. You mentioned being driven. I spend a lot of time at work. One of my desires is to have more time to help others, and to be of service to others, to give them the same opportunity that I have. And I mentioned my wife, Jocelyn. She established a nonprofit, the Place of Grace, where she helps a number of women get into recovery. Mm-hmm. And I have that same desire to help men. And any opportunity I get, I try to put myself in a position to be of service, to encourage others, so that I can in turn be encouraged.
Mm-hmm. The people who are listening today who are trapped in addiction, you have a great story. And I know there's a lot of people watching this, listening to this, that might think, well, that's a great story for him. How does it become my story? And what words of encouragement would you have to people who are still trapped in this? What's their next steps?
Yeah. First and foremost is know there's hope out there. Right. And that there are people that understand, and you're not alone. I thought for so long that I was isolated going through my own issues, but God can turn any mess into a message. I think about the verse in 2 Corinthians 12, that where Paul is crying out to Jesus, and he's to remove the thorn in his flesh.
Right. And
God says, that my grace is sufficient for you, that my power is made strongest through your weakness.
Right.
So it's during those weak times, if we just turn and ask for help, the help is provided.
Right.
Help is there.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that your mess has become a message, not only in the community you're in, but today for us. And so I appreciate you sharing that. And I know this journey is just kind of starting for you, and I'm excited to continue to be a part of it for the years to come and see what God has planned for you. I know He's put together some beautiful people with you and Jocelyn together and your family, and I'm excited to see what is in store for you in the years to come. So thanks for coming today and sharing your message and your story with us. It's been great. And thanks for listening and watching. If you'd like to know more about Recovery His Way, you can check out our website at hiswayinc.org.